Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Apolla's Odyssey. I'm your host, Apolla Asteria, and I'm back in the studio tonight. Should be here pretty much every time from now on, unless I'm traveling. And it looks like I might be getting picked up by a couple radio stations, so more on that later, but I'm really stoked about that. That's definitely going to kind of change the way I'm running this show if this all goes through, which it's looking pretty likely it's going to happen. So I'll wait till I have everything confirmed to give you more details on that. But yeah, really excited about the way things are going. It's been a lot of work getting this show together, but I'm really stoked about it. And if you haven't seen, I actually have these like circuit boards and some really cool stuff happening here on my control panel. So I'm getting that together. I want to get some levers and stuff and make this really look like the control panel for my spaceship. So I'm really stoked about it, and I'm really stoked to start getting some more scripted shows together. That's the next step here. Let me know, by the way, if everything's sounding okay. We just did some new soundproofing here in the studio, so I'd love to hear your feedback on that. So tonight's show, I'm going to get into asteroids. Are they a threat to humanity? So China recently posted some some articles have been posted recently about China possibly sending. Apparently they've been working on rockets that they can send up to the atmosphere to break up asteroids if they get close to hitting our planet. So I want to go over those. I thought those were very interesting, but also I want to get into whether or not they actually destroyed an advanced ancient civilization of our ancestors in the ancient past. And is it possible that the asteroid or comet that came around then could be coming back around soon? So we're going to be talking about that on tonight's show, and I'm actually really going to get into advanced civilizations, ancient lost civilizations with this show. So I kind of probably should have put that more in the title here, but as I was kind of getting everything prepared for the show tonight, that's just something that comes up a lot. And I've done a lot of research with this, with the work by Graham Hancock, and I've always had a feeling that intuitively I've always felt that there's something to all these ancient civilizations around the world, carved in stone in these temples around the world. They're always talking about this comet or an asteroid or whatever it is that came around ancient times, possibly caused the Great Flood and major catastrophes around 11,500 years ago. So we're going to get into that tonight, and also if it's possible that it is coming back around. These temples around the world, I'll get into this later, but they actually kind of astrologically pinpoint a certain time in their glyphs and carvings that if you use the star charts, astrological, I forget what it's called, but there's like these sort of charts that astrologers and astronomers use where you can actually speed up time and slow it down to the point where the stars and the planets are moving at a certain time in history or in the future. So in a lot of these temples around the world, these ancient temples such as Göbekli Tepe, which we'll be getting into later, they actually have pinpointed a certain time astrologically that can only be narrowed down to around this time in history, right now, the present moment. But these ancient people had pinpointed this time astrologically 11,500 years ago or more. So we're going to get into that tonight, and I'm really stoked about it. So, like I said, it's really good to be back here in the studio. I know I've been kind of missing my Thursday shows because I've just had so much going on lately. I'm definitely sticking with the Tuesday shows, because I just, there's a lot of different things I'm setting up right now, and I'm excited to not just have my own show, possibly having some radio shows I'll be a part of, which it'll be the same thing as my weekly show, except, I'll have a producer running it and commercial breaks, so it should be interesting. Also, I'm looking forward to starting a special segment with third phase of moon, so that should be interesting. Maybe kind of a weekly thing. So make sure you tune in and stay up to date with all my latest, because a lot's going to be coming out. And it's been a huge building process. I've been wearing a lot of different hats getting this all started, but it's really feeling good getting it going. So before I start tonight's show, I want to again remind you all that my show is basically funded by my art. I don't make a whole lot off of YouTube just yet, hopefully in the future. But if you would like to help support my show and help me survive in LA, because this is pretty much all I do right now besides little acting jobs I book here and there, please go to shamanspears.com and purchase my art. I still have a lot of spears left from the Odyssey collection, especially the Shaman Spears Minis collection, which are a little cheaper. I just posted these Moon Maiden headdresses. I'm really excited about these. Everything on this side, by the way, is handcrafted by yours truly. And yeah, I made these amazing feather headdresses. I call them Moon Maiden headdresses because they all have all the phases of the moon on the forehead here. They are lightweight and they can fit to any head size, because the back here, you can see here, the back is elastic. So you can cut it and knot it and tie it to any head size. And they're lightweight, flexible. I mean, they just look really awesome. Like, I promise you, you'll feel very badass wearing them. I was originally thinking about pricing them at around $450 each, just because I spent so long making them. I mean, they're even like rhinestoned, and I put a lot of work into them, but I decided to keep them at $250 each because I don't know, it's my first batch, and I'm sure I'll make some more later. Also, I still have a lot of my I Believe in Humans first edition of Apollo's Odyssey merchandise. So if you would like to check out these shirts, there's still, I believe, at least 10 of them left. I originally had 30, and actually on the side of the shirt, they actually say 1 of 30. They're made from a really amazing material. It's not cheap t-shirt material. Like, these are actually like very well made shirts. And on the back of it, it says Apollo's Odyssey, my show name. I have these amazing Orgonite daggers. They aren't real daggers. They're just shaped like daggers, but they're actually not sharp. Little disclaimer there. I have some Orgonite pyramids and obviously Orgonite necklaces, things like that. So make sure you go check out my site, but especially the new Moon Maiden headdress collection. These are really freaking cool, especially, if you're like into going to festivals or anything like that. These are perfect for that. So definitely go check that out when you get the chance. Okay. So first I want to get into what has been posted about these rockets that China supposedly is working on, that can be sent into the atmosphere to break up, or maybe not the atmosphere, but like just outside our atmosphere, to break up any asteroids that may be coming to possibly threaten humanity. So I think this is very interesting, and who knows if that's the real agenda with why they're making these rockets. Like, maybe there's something else to it. But, when I read Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock, which I'll get into that later, but when I read this book, it talked about, as I was mentioning earlier, about how in the ancient past it's very likely that a comet or asteroid did hit the planet and caused continent-wide wildfires and flooding, and possibly is what sunk Atlantis, or that could have happened then and a little more recently. But supposedly this could be coming back around in our time. So, when I read this, I was thinking, like, with all of our technology, why is it that we haven't been able to make anything that could incinerate an asteroid if it did come close and threaten to, harm our planet. So, I was very fascinated when I actually found this out that they were planning on doing this. I was like, okay, thank God someone's looking into this because, this is something that is possibly could be a major problem in the future. So, this is from Reuters. Chinese researchers propose deflecting Armageddon asteroids with rockets. Chinese researchers want to send more than 20 of China's largest rockets to practice turning away a sizable asteroid, a technique that may eventually be crucial if a killer rock is on a collision course with Earth. The idea is more than science fiction. Sometime between late 2021 and early 2022, the United States will launch a robotic spacecraft to intercept two asteroids relatively close to Earth. When it arrives a year later, the NASA spacecraft will crash land on the smaller of the two rocky bodies to see how much the asteroid's trajectory changes. It will be humanity's first try at changing the course of a celestial body. At China's National Space Science Center, researchers found in simulations that 23 long March 5 rockets hitting simultaneously could deflect a large asteroid from its original path by a distance 1.4 times the Earth's radius. This is great. Their calculations are based on an asteroid dubbed Bennu, orbiting the Sun, which is as wide as the Empire State Building is tall. It belongs to a class of rockets with the potential to cause regional or continental damage. Asteroids spanning more than 1 kilometer would have global consequences. The Science Center cited a recently published study in Icarus, a journal on planetary science. Long March 5 rockets are, I feel like that should say Mach 5, but I guess it's March 5. Rockets are key to China's near-term space ambitions, from delivering space station modules to launching probes to the moon and Mars. China has successfully launched 6 long March 5 rockets since 2016, with the last one causing some safety concerns as its remnants re-entered the atmosphere in May, which obviously we all heard about. I'm just here. The proposal of keeping the upper stage of the launch rocket is to a guiding spacecraft making one large kinetic impactor to deflect an asteroid. It's a rather nice concept. Okay. So that's the first article there, and this is interesting. So I'm gonna pull up another one, and we can compare this. So this one's by Live Science. China wants to launch asteroid-deflecting rockets to save Earth from Armageddon. Chinese scientists are planning to fire more than 20 rockets into space to divert an asteroid impact that has a small chance of one day ending life on Earth. Their target is an asteroid named Bennu. Okay, so this looks like it's saying pretty much the same thing. So, I really feel that it's very important that we come together as a human race and collectively work through these problems together. I think that is so important right now. And reading this in Graham Hancock's book, I found this very fascinating because, this is something that could really bring humanity together. And outside, it's interesting because a lot of people are saying that, that would be the whole agenda behind the supposed fake alien invasion, false flag alien invasion that they are talking about having. And, a lot of different whistleblowers have come forward and said that supposedly this could be happening soon. But I think it's interesting because the reason why they say that supposedly they want to have that is to maybe help bring humanity together. That may be one of the agendas, one of the better reasons for the agenda. because like humanity will come together collectively if they feel that there is a threat from the outside. And or is like every man for themselves, who knows how people will react in that kind of situation. But obviously, and I don't want to get too doomsday into this show. This to me is like a hopeful thing, because if we have the technology to deflect an asteroid that could pose a threat to humanity, that's really amazing, because obviously, in ancient times, this has been a problem. And I'm going to get into this later, but I think it's really fascinating that, we can actually come together with our technology. And, who cares what nation is doing it? I'm just glad someone's doing it. And I'm hoping the Space Force will work on some programs with this. I'm sure they probably already are. So I think this is really fascinating. And, mad props to whoever is working on this, no matter what nation they are. And, who knows which time? Maybe there's some other agenda behind it. Maybe they're really trying to do this for a different reason. So we'll see about that. But I'm just glad that, this is being talked about and it's possible. Because when I heard, I've really thought about this so many times before. It's like, why, with the technology we have, why can't we just make some sort of like laser beam technology that can just incinerate an asteroid if it comes close? And a lot of people have said this isn't possible, but also I do worry, because what if, it was coming towards us, and then, China or whatever nation sent all these rockets to break it apart, and then it still ended up coming this way anyways, but in a million pieces. That would be an issue too. And, a lot of people are saying, and I'm going to get into this later in the show, but a lot of people are saying, oh, maybe this is the reason why all these billionaires are working on spacefaring technology, because they want all the elites to be able to get off the planet in case something happens. Like maybe they know something, maybe they think that something's coming here, and maybe they want to make sure they can get off planet if something does happen like this. So very interesting. Okay, I'm just trying to see here. What do I want to start with tonight? Okay, I'm going to start with this. So, this book that I'm going to be talking about for pretty much the entire rest of this show is Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock. So, this is a really amazing book. You can get it here. Obviously, this is where it is on Amazon. I highly, highly recommend it. I actually read it probably around the time it came out in 2017. And right after, it was, I believe, my second time ever going to Contact in the Desert, which is the Woodstock of UFO conferences in California every year in Joshua Tree, California. Or that's where it was at the time. Now it's in Desert Hot Springs normally. But it was really interesting because right after I finished it, I ended up meeting him. And I didn't even, like, at the time, I didn't really follow these different authors. And I just read the book and I was like, wow, this is a great book. And then I see this person doing a presentation. He's talking about all these things I read about in this book. And I end up finding out, it's him and he's the author, and Graham Hancock, obviously, and that he speaks at all these conferences. So that's kind of what got me into going to UFO conferences, because I'm just a huge reader. And I read a lot of books by speakers in the conference kind of scene. And I didn't really realize there was a whole like scene about it where people came and talked and gave presentations. So that's kind of really what got me into being so involved in the UFO community in the first place. But so this book in particular is so important because what it talks about is a certain time which is labeled by scientists as the Younger Dryas period. So the Younger Dryas period was basically an ice age period. It was towards the end of the ice age when supposedly, from what a lot of scientists have come together, and if you look at the mainstream articles about this, they will try to discredit it because, a lot of these scientists are saying we actually had advanced civilizations around this time, 11,500 years ago, and then this comet came and broke apart in the atmosphere, and pieces of it hit North America and the Atlantic Ocean and some of Europe. And what happened was, what this caused supposedly was continent no, continent-wide wildfires because of the instant shockwave that happened with this. And so what proves this is America used to have monkeys. And America no longer has monkeys after this happened. You would think that America would have monkeys since obviously there's so many trees here. But what happened was there was a continent-wide wildfire which actually put so much ash in the atmosphere, and this happened in North America and Europe, that it completely blocked out the sun for quite a while. And what also happened was that the shockwave from this actually, so at the time, because this was the ice age, there are ice caps over North America and Europe. And what happened was the shockwave from this actually flash melted these ice caps, where there was instant flooding that just came pouring all over America, all over Europe. And this is where we get the stories of the Great Flood in the Bible. And not just the Bible, but pretty much every culture around the world, every civilization around the world, basically says that there was a Great Flood at one point. So it's really fascinating. And if you read this book, I highly recommend it. It gets into all of this. It actually gets into what every ancient culture has said about this Great Flood, the survivors of it, which obviously there's very few survivors. So very interesting. And, what happened with this was that obviously, caused continent-wide wildfires, flash flooding, and, America there was actually advanced civilizations in America, not just Egypt. Who built all these stone temples all around the world that we can't even build now? This is what I'm talking about here. And so I'm going to pull up some of the things I just mentioned so we can get a little into these little topics. I'm jumping around a lot because this is just, it's just really so wild, and I love talking about all of this. So here's one thing that proves that there was instant flash flooding across North America at one point. So there's a place in Washington called Dry Falls, and what Dry Falls is basically described, and here it is right here. So in Magicians of the Gods, they describe it as basically it being a place where there was a waterfall was instantly made from catastrophic flooding, where it was basically 10 times the size of the Niagara Falls, and it happened over the space of about 2 weeks. So I'm actually going to read the Wikipedia what it says here. But Dry Falls is a 3.5 mile long scallop precipice with 4 major alcoves in central Washington scablands. The cataract complex is on the opposite side of the upper Grand Coulee from Columbia River and at the head of the lower Grand Coulee northern linear canyon. According to the current geological model, catastrophic flooding channeled water at 65 miles per hour through the upper Grand Coulee and over this 400-foot rock face at the end of the last glaciation. It is estimated that the falls were 5 times the width of the Niagara Falls, with 10 times the flow of the current rivers in the world combined. So imagine that happening. I mean, this is something that should be in the history books for every American student growing up in school. A lot of times they talk about these ancient civilizations around the world, but we don't ever talk about what could have been in America, and why do we not have evidence of there being advanced ancient civilizations in America? Because obviously we were hit the hardest by the Great Flood and, this catastrophic event that happened 11,500 years ago. So another thing that happened when this event happened, there was something called shocked quartz. There's a layer of shocked quartz that can be found during this time period, which actually proves that there that there was a shock wave that kind of hit the planet at this time. So let me find this here. Sorry, I have so many tabs open. Okay, here we go. So this is by the Audubon Society. It says, scientists find smoking gun for California comet theory. Scientists have found a new evidence supporting the hotly contested theory that a comet collision was responsible for a North American extinction at the end of the Pleistocene approximately 12,900 years ago. The impact is said to have wiped out the Clovis, a Caledonian culture thought to be the continent's first human inhabitants, and 35 mammal and 19 bird species. A team from the University of Oregon has reported shock-synthesized hexagonal diamonds in 12,900-year-old sediments on the North Channel Islands off the Southern California coast. The tiny diamond and diamond clusters were also found in association with soot, whose presence in the sedimentary record indicates extremely hot wildfires. Scientists point to the geological similarity of the proposed California impact site to the Chicxulub crater in Mexico, the site of an asteroid collision 65 million years ago that wiped out the dinosaurs. Although this theory still has its critics as well. The Chicxulub crater has a thin iridium-rich layer also containing shocked quartz. The hexagonal crystalline structure of shocked minerals is only formed under extremely high temperatures and pressures, two conditions consistent with a cosmic impact. The age of the impact sediments corresponds with the extinction of the pygmy mammoth on the northern Channel Islands, camel horse, later introduced on the continent by Europeans, and approximately 50 other bird and mammal species. The timing of the extinction also matches the beginning of the Younger Dryas, a period of abrupt climate change nicknamed the Big Freeze. I'm sorry. Earlier in the show, I said that this was at the end of the Younger Dryas. I have actually it was the beginning of the Younger Dryas, so my bad. Which impacted Europe, North America, and as far south as New Zealand. The University of Oregon team argues the abrupt Younger Dryas climate change happened as a result of several comet strikes dispersed across North America and Southern California site, the first to be discovered. So this is interesting because, earlier today I went to pull up articles about this event and about the comet hitting around this time period. And it's interesting because I've read so much evidence about it in all the books that I've researched. And it's interesting because if you go online and you try to Google it, pretty much every mainstream media organization says that it's all complete rubbish, which is BS. I'm sorry. They want to hide this from us. And I think there's a reason for that. They don't want us to know that this comet came around at this time and caused such a problem because, and I'll get into this later, it is projected to come back around again soon. So we'll get into that in a bit here. But the paper and so this is obviously solid evidence right here that I'm reading. So who can argue against this? The paper appeared online July 20th ahead of print publication in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Other theories argue overhunting by Clovis populations caused the rapid extinction of large mammals around the end of the Pleistocene. But many researchers are hopeful the discovery of the shocked minerals in the Northern Channel Islands will be a smoking gun for the comet theory. So there you go. That is very solid evidence, in my opinion, and very fascinating. Good to see you all on the chat here. Sorry, I'm not really bringing anyone in here. I have a lot to go over in tonight's show. So let me see what else I had pulled up here. I know I'm jumping around a lot because this is just a lot to cover. And there's so much evidence out there about it. Okay. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm basically just trying to prove to you guys that, an asteroid did come around 11,500 years ago, or around that time period. Some say 13,000, some say around 12,000. It's kind of hard to accurately date it. But, it's projected to possibly be coming around again. And, I'm going to get into this a little later, but basically, Graham Hancock found in his research that these temples around the world basically pinpointed that at around this time period that we are in now, that it was going to come around again. So basically some say it's a planet, Nibiru Planet X, which supposedly has this gravitational pull around it, or this magnetic field around it, that causes all these asteroids, comets, things like that to be caught in its gravitational pull. And this could be very likely from the planet Tiamat, which was between Earth and Mars at one point, which exploded and became the asteroid belt. So, a lot of people say that this is what this is from, and supposedly this planet comes around every 3,600 years or so. And, who knows about that? It could also just be a comet that comes around this time every so many years, but we are past due for it coming around again. And supposedly, this was a problem in the past. And so the ancient cultures around the world took a lot of time and effort to build these extravagant stone structures that would outlast millennia, just to warn us in this present time that this could be a possible threat to us. So this is very important, and it was important to them if they took all the time and effort to build these extravagant stone structures just to warn us of this time period we are in now. So here's an article that shows evidence of a comet swarm hitting Earth around 13,000 years ago. And this is by Science Alert. Researchers have translated famous ancient symbols in a temple in Turkey, and they tell the story of a devastating comet impact more than 13,000 years ago. Cross-checking the event with computer simulations of the solar system around this time, researchers in 2017 suggested that the carvings could describe a comet impact that occurred around 10,950 BCE, about the same time a mini ice age started that changed civilization forever. This mini ice age, known as Younger Dryas, lasted around 1,000 years, and is considered a crucial period for humanity because it was around the time agriculture and the first Neolithic civilizations arose. And so I don't agree with that, because I think there was something before then, and these people they're talking about here are the survivors that had to start over. I mean, okay, just take a moment and think. If something happened to our civilization today, if, we had an impact like the one I mentioned earlier that caused continent-wide wildfires, blocked out the atmosphere, caused massive flooding all over the planet, obviously our electricity would not work anymore. The people that would survive would be the people that live in the Amazon, are already living off the land, not most of us that are just used to living in our modern day society with our modern day comforts. And just imagine if, obviously this would block out our electric grid, and, over time, our technology would no longer work. So what would we do with it? And what would remain? Obviously, the only things that would remain are what has been built in stone, because wood rots after, I don't know, couple decades, really, a few decades, and metal rusts after about 200 years. Things are grown over and sediment covers things. I mean, if you just like look on different History Channel shows of like I saw on some show a while back, they were in Alexandria, Egypt, and they were going through all these layers. These archaeologists were digging through all these layers trying to find a time in the time when Alexander the Great had these Roman roads built. And they actually had to go like half a mile into the earth just to get to this point. So that just goes to show you how much sediment collects over things over time. I mean, that time, that was like what, a few thousand years ago, couple thousand years ago. So imagine how deep, what layer a civilization would be in that is from 15,000 years ago. Or even, 11,000 years ago. I mean, you would have to dig like miles into the earth just to find the evidence. So that is really, unless, something happened that pushed the earth around a little bit more. But, it's crazy to think about. And, obviously I mentioned earlier about North America and Europe being hit the hardest by this cataclysmic event. So, obviously if there was instant flash flooding over the entire continent, this would cause the floodwaters to pick up sediment and just, carry it all over the entire landscape and bury anything, any remnants of any civilization would be buried under layers and layers of sediment. And 11,500 years ago. So obviously by now that would even be more buried. And, I want to get into, in a second, I'm going to actually show you the biggest pyramid in America is actually in southern Illinois, where I'm from. So I'm going to get into that in a second, but let me just finish reading this article first. Sorry, I'm going all over the place, but I really want to cover this in a very full kind of way, and there's just so much to it. So going on here, this mini ice age known as the Younger Dryas lasted about 1,000 years and is considered to be a crucial period for humanity because it's about the time agriculture. And obviously, like I said, I don't agree that that's the time that these things arose. And when I get into explaining Göbekli Tepe later, this proves that we're not hunter-gatherers back then. There was actually very advanced civilizations 15,000 years ago. But potentially in response to new colder climates. The period has also been linked to the extinction of the woolly mammoth. But although the Younger Dryas has been thoroughly studied, it's not clear exactly what triggered the period. A comet strike is one of the leading hypotheses, but scientists haven't been able to find physical proof of comets from around this time. The team from the University of Edinburgh in the UK say these carvings found that in what's believed to be the world's oldest known temple, Göbekli Tepe, in southern Turkey, show further evidence that a comet triggered the Younger Dryas. I think this research, along with the recent finding of a widespread platinum anomaly across the North American continent, virtually sealed the case in favor of a Younger Dryas comet impact, lead researcher Martin told The Telegraph at the time. Our work serves to reinforce that physical evidence. What is happening here is a process of paradigm change. The translation of the symbols also suggests that Göbekli Tepe wasn't just another temple as long assumed. It might have also been an ancient observatory. It appears Göbekli Tepe was, among other things, an observatory for monitoring the night sky. One of its pillars seems to have served as a memorial to this devastating event, probably the worst day in history since the end of the Ice Age. The Göbekli Tepe is thought to have been built around 9,000 BCE, roughly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, but the symbols on the pillar date the event to around 2,000 years before that. The carvings were found on a pillar known as the vulture stone, pictured below, and show different animals in specific positions around the stone. The symbols had long puzzled scientists, but Sweatman and his team of engineers discovered that they actually corresponded to an astronomical constellations and showed a swarm of comet fragments hitting the Earth. So let's see if we can see this here. Oh, it doesn't really show it right there. An image of a headless man on the stone, also thought to symbolize human disaster and extensive loss of life following the impact. The carvings show signs of being cared for by the people of Göbekli Tepe for millennia, which indicates that the event they describe might have had long-lasting impacts on civilization. To try to figure out whether that comet strike actually happened or not, the researchers used computer models to match the patterns of the stars detailed on the vulture stone to a specific date, and they found evidence that the event in question would have occurred about 10,950 BCE, give or take about 250 years. Here's what the researchers suggest that the sky would have looked like back then. You know, it's interesting. I'm actually reading a book that is set, it's actually like a historical fiction, but it was set in the time of Atlantis right now. And it's interesting because they actually, in the book, they kind of get into detail about how during the time of Atlantis, the constellations were different. And I don't think during the Younger Dryas period, I don't think that was the end of Atlantis. I think Atlantis may have been around way, way earlier than that time period. But we'll get into that later. So the dating of these carvings also matches an ice core taken from Greenland, which pinpoints the Younger Dryas period as beginning around 10,890 BCE. According to Sweatman, this isn't the first time ancient archaeology has provided insight into civilization's past. Many Paleolithic cave paintings and artifacts with similar animal symbols and other repeated symbols suggest astronomy could be very ancient indeed. If you consider that according to astronomers, this giant comet probably arrived in the inner solar system some 20 to 30,000 years ago, and it would have been a very visible and dominant feature of the night sky. It is hard to see how ancient people could have ignored this given the likely consequences. So this is really fascinating. And, in the book, Magicians of the Gods, they obviously get into the way that a lot of ancient civilizations described this event, what they saw in the sky. I believe it was Native Americans described it as or the Chinese described it as a dragon with a tail, with a long red tail. And that's what it would have looked like. It would have looked like a long red, thing going across the sky. Sorry, I need to figure out how to mute this, you guys. Oh, I'm not sure how to mute this. Okay. So, and then obviously Egypt, the Egyptians talked about there being a snake coming through the sky, a red snake. And there's actually a very interesting myth that is a flood myth that is created around it too, that the Egyptians recorded. So very fascinating. Okay. Okay, so here in that article I was just reading, they're mentioning Greenland and the evidence they have in Greenland about the Younger Dryas. So I'm going to bring this up here and go over this one. So this is by Science magazine. A massive crater under Greenland's ice points to climate-altering impact in the time of humans. On a bright July day 2 years ago, Kurt Kayer was in a helicopter flying over northwest Greenland, an expanse of ice sheer white and sparkling. Soon his target came into view, Hiawatha Glacier, a slow-moving sheet of ice more than a kilometer thick. It advances on the Arctic Ocean, not in a straight wall, but in a conspicuous semicircle, as though spilling out of a basin. Kayer, a geologist at the National History Museum of Denmark in Copenhagen, suspected the glacier was hiding an explosive secret. The helicopter landed near the surging river that drains the glacier, sweeping out rocks from beneath it. Kayer had 18 hours to find the mineral crystals that would confirm his suspicions. What he brought home clinched the case of a grand discovery. Hidden beneath Hiawatha is a 31-kilometer wide impact crater, big enough to swallow Washington, D.C. Kayer and 21 co authors report today in a paper in Science Advances. The crater was left when an iron asteroid 1.5 kilometers across slammed into Earth, possibly within the past 100,000 years. Though not as cataclysmic as the dinosaur-killing Chicxulub impact, which carved out a 200-kilometer wide crater in Mexico about 66 million years ago, the Hiawatha impactor 2 may have left an imprint on the planet's history. The timing is still up for debate, but some researchers on the discovery team believe the asteroid struck at a crucial moment, roughly 13,000 years ago, just as the world was thawing from the last ice age. That would mean it crashed into Earth when mammoths and other megafauna were in decline and people were spreading across North America. The impact would have been a spectacle for anyone within 500 kilometers. A white fireball 4 times larger and 3 times brighter than the sun would have streaked across the sky. If the object struck an ice sheet, it would have tunneled through the bedrock, vaporizing water and stone alike in a flash. The resulting explosion packed the energy of 700 megaton nuclear bombs. Okay, sorry. And even an observer hundreds of kilometers away would have experienced a buffeting shock wave, a monstrous thunderclap, and hurricane force winds. Later, rock debris might have rained down on North America and Europe and released steam, a greenhouse gas which could have locally warmed Greenland, melting even more ice. The news of the impact discovery has reawakened an old debate among scientists who study ancient climate. A massive impact on the ice sheet would have sent meltwater pouring into the Atlantic Ocean, potentially disrupting the conveyor belt of ocean currents and causing temperatures to plunge, especially in the northern hemisphere. What would it mean for species or life at the time? It's a huge open question. A decade ago, a small group of scientists proposed a similar scenario. They were trying to explain a cooling event more than 1,000 years long called the Younger Dryas, which began 12,800 years ago as the last ice age was ending. Their controversial solution was to invoke an extraterrestrial agent, the impact of one or more comets. The researchers proposed that besides changing the plumbing of North America, the impact also ignited wildfires across 2 continents that led to the extinction of large mammals and disappearance of mammoth hunting Clovis people of North America. The research group marshaled suggestive but inconclusive evidence, and few other scientists were convinced. But the idea caught the public's imagination despite the obvious limitation. No one could find the impact crater. Proponents of a Younger Dryas impact now feel vindicated. I'd unequivocally predict that this crater is the same age as the Younger Dryas, says James Kennett, a marine geologist at the University of California, Santa Barbara, one of the idea's original boosters. Okay, so, obviously there's a lot more to this, but I'm going to stop that one because I want to share some more here. Whew. So, what else do I have to share with you guys today? Sorry, I'm not keeping up with the comments here. I'm just, it's a lot of work pulling up all these different articles. So, obviously, if this event took place, there would be civilizations that would now be underwater. So, I want to get into that, and then I'm going to go back to the, actually, first, I want to get into that in a little bit here, but first, I want to talk about the Cahokia Pyramid in Illinois. So I grew up in Illinois, and this pyramid is actually the biggest pyramid in North America. And the base of it is bigger than the Pyramid of Giza, but obviously it's a step pyramid. And so this is the top of what it looks like now. And it is actually grown over with grass. It's actually very close to St. Louis. So St. Louis used to be an ancient civilization for giants. So obviously giants, that's a whole other topic on its own, but just look into it yourself. But there used to be an advanced ancient civilization in St. Louis, and like I said, if a cataclysmic event happened 11,500 years ago, imagine all the sediment that would cover certain areas. So this is what it looks like, and obviously they started unearthing it, and they haven't even tried digging it up. Like if I was an archaeologist, I would want to go inside this and see what's actually in it. Like, obviously there's probably some openings and areas and archaeological evidence buried all through here, and I would love to know what is inside this. But also, just think if, there's this in southern Illinois, imagine how much evidence is in North America that we haven't even discovered yet. I mean, there are probably hills all over the place that are actually pyramids that we think are hills that are actually pyramids, just covered with layers and layers of sediment. I actually look at this all the time when I'm driving around and think about this. I mean, look at this. This looks like just a hill. You would think that it's just a hill if you didn't know any better. And so from what I've heard, ground penetrating radar is obviously finding a lot of pyramids around the planet. And supposedly more have been found in North America, but they're keeping it quiet right now. I think more because they don't want us to know our true ancient history than anything. But this is so fascinating. Okay. So let me pull up here. I'll show you what the St. Louis used to look like at this time period. Okay, so East St. Louis used to be an advanced ancient city with pyramids. So this is what that would have looked like. And there were apparently many pyramids in the area. And apparently there were millions of people that lived here. So very fascinating. Let me see if in this article it talks about the time period this would have been in. Doesn't look like it does. So that's interesting. Oh, it's saying around 600 AD, but I feel like it must have been way earlier than that. Okay. Thanks, VPXM. He says, Apolla, beautiful and smart. Doesn't happen that often. I really appreciate that. That's what happens when you actually grow up a nerd and you're still a nerd, but you go into modeling and acting school as you get a little older. So, yeah, you can be both, I guess. Kind of interesting. Okay, so earlier I was talking about Göbekli Tepe. And okay, I'm jumping around a lot here because there's just so much to cover with all this. Okay, I want to talk about actually the underwater pyramids. So obviously there's ancient civilizations all over the world that's underwater. And this is just the Google search of underwater pyramids. It's hard to find good articles because they really try so hard to cover all this up because they don't want us to know about our true ancient past. But here's just a general, if you look on Google about underwater pyramids, look at how many pyramids are underwater. Obviously some of these aren't realistic images, but most of them are. And so now I'm going to get into some articles here. Okay. Yeah, someone here said 600 AD is BS. I totally agree with you about the ancient civilization. Okay, so here's some ancient civilizations that have been found underwater. So here's ancient Greece. And obviously, this is after like millennia. So imagine what these cities actually looked like at one point. And like I said, earlier in the show, imagine if this happened to our civilization, how much would remain? I mean, even any gold or iron, anything that's built out of gold or iron, even would obviously be melted down and turned into weapons. So this is just so fascinating. Oh, and you see, it says right here that this flooding happened around 12,000 years ago. Here's in Turkey. Doesn't show what's actually under the water in India here. Egypt. Doesn't show there either. Here's China. Jamaica's lost city. That's a little earlier though. Okay. And I have one more to go over here. It's interesting, all the mainstream media companies, they never really want to go too deep. Even though there's actual evidence, they're like, yeah, we're not going to go that deep with it. But I just want to show, the supposed mainstream media accredited information just for the fake checkers out there. The annoying fake checker people. Okay. Oh, and here's a pyramid off the coast of Alaska. And it is so funny. I pulled up this article earlier because I was trying to find this pyramid off the coast of Alaska. And actually it mentions my fellow colleagues over at Third Face and Moon. And apparently they did a video on this pyramid off the coast of Alaska. But, I was trying to find, apparently people have actually gone down and they underwater, some divers, and they found that there's like, this is actually a step pyramid with giant steps going up it. So I tried to find that earlier, but I couldn't find it. I know people have actually looked into this and, been there in person, but I couldn't find it. Okay, so obviously, I've been talking about how these ancient civilizations around the world all point to there being, a very critical time in history where this great flood happened because of a comet that hit our planet. And obviously, a lot of these structures were built right after this time. And, a lot of times they're not dated correctly by archaeologists because, a lot of times they're actually kind of refurbished. I'm not sure if that's the word I'm looking for, but, a lot of like the pyramids, they say, oh, supposedly Cheops built the Great Pyramid and that was like 5,000 or 3,000 years ago, which is, I'm sorry, wrong. He actually had it refurbished. So I think a lot of these structures, they're so important to these ancient civilizations because they wanted the future of humanity to know what had happened to them and that it's very likely that will happen to us around this time period. So like I, talked about in the articles earlier, they seem to pinpoint, they all seem to have carvings in these stone structures that pinpoint astrologically a time that is very similar to astrologically what our time looks like now, saying that, something may happen again during this time that happened to them back then. But what's so fascinating about this is that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this, but these bad guys, right? There's these bad guys and everyone's talking about them. I didn't say bad guys, I said bag guys. So these supposedly they're Anunnaki. Some people call them Anunnaki. Some people say they're aliens. I don't know. But there's these guys that are carrying these bags and everyone wants to know what these bags are. But they are found carved into these stone structures that I speak of around the world. And they all seem to be made around this certain time, right as the floodwaters were receding around the world. And, one of the most prominent and oldest places this has been found is obviously you go back like Tepe, and, there's the bad guys there, and then there's the bad guys in South America. And it always shows that these certain people came around to these different areas and showed these ancient civilizations that were more hunter-gatherer civilizations, agriculture, and, how to make clothing, and, mathematics, and all these different, technologies and knowledge. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, like Graham Hancock and a lot of other people tend to say that, supposedly these may have been the remnants of the Atlanteans who went around and had to give their knowledge to these other civilizations around the planet that were more like scavengers or hunter-gatherers. So, like I was saying earlier, I mean, if something happened to on the planet right now, who would be the ones that would survive? It's not going to be, these like tech people in Silicon Valley. I'm sorry, but they're not going to survive an apocalypse. It's going to be, the people that are in the Amazon that still have no idea that there's even advanced civilization on the planet. So, who are these bad guys? What's with these handbags being seen in these stone structures on every continent around the world? So I'm going to talk about this. This article is by Ancient Origins. What is in the mysterious handbag seen in ancient carvings across cultures and countries? One of the more mysterious symbols that have been found in ancient carvings is an image that looks uncannily like a handbag. The shape appears in depictions made by the Sumerians of Iraq, and the ruins of ancient Turkish temples, and decorations of the Moray in New Zealand, and in crafts made by the Olmecs of Central America. Handbags can be seen in the art of disparate cultures from around the world and throughout time, with the first known instance of a handbag appearing in the end of the Ice Age. What is this mysterious symbol that can be found throughout the ancient world? A representation of the cosmos? The handbag image is so called because it looks very similar to the modern day purse. The objects typically feature a rounded handle-like top and a rectangular bottom, and may include varying degrees of additional details of pattern, texture, or pattern. The images sometimes appear as standalone objects, sometimes they're depicted in the hand of a person, god, or mythical being in a manner similar to how one would hold a basket. One possible theory for the proliferation of this image is its simple and straightforward representation of the cosmos. The semicircle. Okay, so this is, I don't know, obviously this doesn't kind of get into what I've read other places, but I'm just showing you that this is interesting that, these people with these bags, these bad guys, are depicted all around the world, and it's all around 11,000 BC, 12,500 years ago or so. And it's interesting. Why would that be? And if we were supposedly hunter-gatherers back then, how would they have gone around the entire planet building these extravagant stone structures? Warning us about what could possibly be coming. So I'm just showing you some of the photos here. So everything I have talked about in this show today, like I said, you can find it all in Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods, and I highly, highly suggest you read that. I think it's really amazing that, some humanity is coming together with their technology to hopefully figure out how to prevent this situation happening to our planet again. I think that would be interesting if, I feel that they were saying that around the year 2030, this asteroid could very likely come back. So, hopefully we can actually come together collectively to prevent this from happening. And I think that would be really fascinating. Lewis, oh, okay, I just want to go through these comments here. So you guys are making some good comments. I'm sorry I haven't been able to pull them up very much during the show. Lewis Toss says it's possible these bad guys were the Watchers from the Book of Enoch. Really cool. I love that. Yeah, I heard Jeff Bezos is talking about he's been did Jeff Bezos take a flight today already? I'm not sure. I have to look into that. Yeah, I'll have to look into that later. So yeah, sorry, I covered a lot in this show in a short period of time, and it's just such a deep rabbit hole, and I could go so much more into it. But I just want to kind of put this into everyone's minds. The idea of humanity coming together to stop a possible asteroid threat. See, this is what we should be working on. It's like, coming together to help prevent these kind of problems from happening in the future. So that was kind of my point of tonight's show, and I hope you all enjoyed tonight's episode of Apollo's Odyssey. So I don't know if I'll be doing a show this Thursday, as I may be traveling again, filming on an adventure out of town. So we'll see about that. But if not, I'll be here at my usual time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And like I said, it's very likely I will be getting picked up by this radio station. So really excited about that. I'll give you news on that later. And again, please go to shamanspears.com and check out my store. I have lots of amazing artwork up on my store. I have my shaman spears, which are uniquely handcrafted energy channeling devices. I have my new Moon Maidens headdress collection and lots of really amazing orgonite creations. So if you like what I'm doing here, please go ahead and check out my store because basically what that is a donation for my show. So it's very, very much appreciated. Everyone's commenting on my hairstyle. Thank you. I was actually having a bad hair day today, so I try to be more professional for the show, but this is actually kind of how I wear my hair most of the time. Actually, people seem to like it better when I do that anyway, so maybe I should just wear my hair like this more often. So yeah, really deep rabbit hole. I definitely recommend going into all this on your own. If you haven't, please read the book Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this. So this book right here, this is Göbekli Tepe. It's actually a book by Andrew Collins that is specifically on all the latest research on Göbekli Tepe, what is being unearthed there. And it goes very in depth about it being the possible Garden of Eden. So it talks about the Anunnaki and how, how they may have been manipulating DNA and doing that here at Göbekli Tepe, the original supposedly Garden of Eden. So I definitely recommend checking out this book as well. So I hope you all enjoyed tonight's episode of Apollo's Odyssey, and stay tuned for more. I have a lot of exciting things in the works here. And hopefully I'll be back in my studio for the next show. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Please tell your friends. I need to get this show out there. So definitely share if you like. And I hope to see you all soon on Apollo's Odyssey. Over and out.